Okay, so this is to help those of you struggling with finding research terms or wondering how you're supposed to incorporate academic sources into a paper about a cultural analysis. So whether it's a digital culture or whether it's your work culture or whether it's an academic culture, whatever the culture it is, you can use some of these as tips, I guess. One thing to keep aware of is if it's for my class, it's more than likely a cultural analysis that specifically focuses on the writing culture in that environment that you've chosen. So first, anytime you are doing academic research, it always should be used. Academic sources should be used to support whatever your main purpose, whatever your main reason for writing is. And so it should be something connected to whatever it is that you're really trying to say. And there are a couple of ways of doing research. You can read ahead of time and then find the things that are interesting in that research that apply. Or what a lot of students do, which is kind of a less effective practice, but I understand, is if you get what you want to say and then you go and find someone who says it. That's not really the best way to do it, and it's not the most effective rhetorically, but it's better than not having any sources to support your ideas at all. So when you go to use academic sources, especially for an analysis of a writing culture, a lot of students forget that they can use any of the sources from the classroom. So in my class, we've talked a lot about genre and writing technologies and visual design and types of authority, social norms, conventions, that sort of thing. And in my class, we have the 8 aspects and all of their components, which I think when I counted last, just the ones I name on my kind of starter kit there's 120 possible research terms you could use. Any one of those things could be something you look at as a part of a particular culture. And then you could draw back and say, how does this fit into the bigger picture? So a lot of times you want to use sources, one, that you've already read that are academic in a class. If you are reading a lot of PDFs of research from scholars in that discipline or that field, you can always use those readings for your support. Or as a starting place for your support. What I've mentioned in my other general research videos, you can also find a source that works. If you're looking at the genre, if you're looking at genre in your writing culture, so you're looking at the genre of comments comments at the bottom of a YouTube channel. What are the common structures, pieces, parts of that genre? What are the common ways of communicating in that way? You could, if you were looking at that, you could go take one of the sources that we've covered on genre in my class, and you may look at the bottom in the resources and see if on the list of citations or the references page, if any of those other ones sound interesting enough to go find. So that may be a place to start, or just the titles of those other articles may give you a research term to go dig into a database for. And so there's a couple things you can do. One, use the resources you already have. 2, draw search terms from the resources you've been given for a class, whatever it is that you're supposed to be studying. In my case, it's writing, and so you've got the 8 aspects as research terms or any other components. I think what people often they'll often be more likely to get overwhelmed or try and start out broad and think, I've got to find a source for every single thing we've covered, and that's not really true. What you need to do is choose the things that are most important. Drill down into those most important 2 or 3 things about the culture you're studying or the topic you're studying. Choose those 2 or 3 things you want to highlight and research those more deeply and talk about those more in more depth. So drill down into 1 or 2 or 3 key things, or whatever it takes to fill the paper in a substantial, meaningful way and accomplish your purpose. So academic resources can be used to talk that have already been provided in the course. You don't have to cover everything. You want to make rhetorical choices about which sources to use based on a few specific topics instead of a bunch of broad general stuff. And then with writing with cultural analysis specifically, you want to say, what are the practices? That's why a lot of cultural research starts with field notes. What are the practices that I can see and observe? What's the data? What does that tell me about the unseen, possibly unspoken social norms? And what does that tell me about the individuals' beliefs who are practicing those things? Do they have? Why are they? Why is this belief coming out in this type of action within this specific environment? What has allowed that to be okay, whether it's a good practice or a bad practice? What has allowed for people to be comfortable saying or doing that, or writing that, or writing in that way? And so, how has that culture been shaped? How has the writing of that culture and the communication of that culture been shaped? And so and then you can talk any number of ways. So, those are some quick tips on how to use sources when it's specifically linked. Like, how do you find sources? How do you think about sources in connection? Pick a couple key things you want to focus on for the culture. Um, find, use academic resources to give key definitions or to push your thoughts just a little bit further. And look for things that might speak to conventions and norms and beliefs as well. In addition, if you're studying a culture, you can always just find academic resources that tell us more about how that culture works generally. But if you're supposed to be doing a writing culture analysis, make sure you spin that, walk from that general thing in to the writing culture context. The last thing I always say about sources is don't look for a smoking gun source. Don't look for a source that says exactly what you want to say, the way you want to say it for the context that you're writing in, because then you really don't need to say it. Someone else already has. Instead, look for what I call one-off sources. If you're trying to study the culture of Taco Bell, you may look for sources about that type of business, or you may be able to find sources about studies done on similar businesses. So instead of Taco Bell, it's Del Taco or McDonald's. Instead of Taco Bell, it's sources on fast food, and that sort of thing. So those are my quick tips on thinking about research and academic research for writing culture and academic research in general. You can see a longer video about how to deal with databases if you cruise around my channel for a moment. Have a good one. Enjoy.